Alrighty, I will call to order the Yamhill County Board of Commissioners formal session for July 6th, 2023. It is 10 o'clock in the morning. And Commissioner Sterrett, would you please lead us in the flag salute?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. And it looks like I have nobody to remind to sign in today. So but I will try and remember that in the beginning. Item C is our calendar session. Let's see, I want to make sure we can add a couple planning, what I call planning weeks to the calendar this summer, since it tends to be our slower time. One in July and one in August. I think we've done this pretty consistently in the past, but it's just an opportunity for us to not schedule a formal session so that we can take the week and use it to catch up on larger projects that don't necessarily get much time when it comes to the week-to-week schedule. So I'm proposing that we choose July 27th and August 24th, as far as I can see. And Ken looked at the schedule too, that there's no conflicting public hearings or anything else that.
Correct. Neither one
Yeah.
of those dates are what we typically schedule land use hearings for, and there's nothing on the work session schedule for those 2 dates.
Okay. Okay, how does that sound?
Sounds good to me.
Okay, so we won't schedule a formal session that for those 2 weeks, 7/27 and 8/24. However, if something comes up, obviously we will take care of it. So, and then the other thing I wanted to mention was Gina Nickel is wanting to come and do a Yamhill County visit. And her schedule is pretty packed. She's kind of going around the whole state and visiting counties, but on August 30th, she has time to come and see us. I don't know if that works for everybody.
I had sent an email back that was not going to work for me.
August 30th,
And my
okay.
understanding was we were going to be taking from the 24th, but that in any event, I would not be available that day, but she's tried several times. The last time was on a Thursday, which I told her
Right.
we would not be available. So
So the other one that she mentioned, a possibility would be Wednesday, September 6th,
yeah, I don't see why not.
which is
I have to check. I'm pretty sure there's nothing. We'll have to go look. I don't have anything scheduled. What time is she looking at?
she didn't say a time. I'm not sure where she lives, but my assumption is she'd be driving here and then sort of spending half a day and making the rounds and then
I think it's
we're done.
Wilson.
So has she ever done that before?
She's Wilsonville?
Wilsonville? I don't remember her coming before, so I'm not really sure.
No, she
Okay.
hasn't. Sure.
So the 6th, I don't see anything
Anytime after.
calendar
I have,
necessarily.
Meetings until about 11-ish, so. Maybe we could make them in the afternoon, 1 to 3 or something, 1 to 2, 1 to 3.
In the afternoon? Okay. Yeah. Okay, so I will respond to Sarah and just let her know the 6th works and around 1 o'clock or so.
That'd be great, thank
Okay.
you.
Anything else to add to the calendar?
So mentioned this before, but since we're a week out, Polk County Fairgrounds is going to have the ODOT Highway 20 intersection public outreach at the fairgrounds there, 4 to 7 on the 12th, July 12th,
July 12th.
Okay.
if anybody's interested. Lyle's been MWAC, all the different committees, they've been pushing that date. Because it's a pretty important intersection. They want to get input from, because it affects Yamhill County also. And
Okay, thank you.
Did you get a notice? Can you forward an email?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, anything else to add to calendar? No. Christian, do we need to consider the Hampton SIP issue? Is that something we need to calendar?
You know, I'm waiting on some feedback from them. I'll know more hopefully this week on what our timeline is. But I don't think there's anything yet to calendar.
All right. Okay, item D is public comment. This time period is reserved for public comment on any topic other than an agenda item, a quasi judicial land use matter, or a topic scheduled for a public hearing. And I don't believe we received any written comment, but if you are in the audience and would like to offer a public comment, please come forward now. If you are online, please raise your virtual hand. Okay, seeing none. We will move on to department updates, and we are being joined by our county assessor, Derek Worf. Welcome, Derek.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chair, Commissioners, and Ken, Christian, Carolina, and Nicole. Thank you. Thank you for the opportunity to come and share today. One of the things I love doing is telling people the important things we do and how well we do it. So what a perfect time to share with you some of our accomplishments since we last met and what we're doing currently. So just so you know, by now everyone should know, I'll just put it on the record for everyone who might be listening. The Office of Assessment and Tax for Yamhill County includes the assessor function and the tax collector function and cartography. So those are the three primary, I'll call them divisions that we have. And each of those runs on an annual cycle, doing certain things during certain times of the year. Somewhat repetitive, but every year has some new challenges. So I'll go through where we're at currently for this last year for those groups, and then any questions along the way, please just jump in. So for the appraisal department, so we appraise everything that's commercial, industrial, rural, any urban properties, personal business property, machinery and equipment. We appraise all of the assets for the county. And I believe at this point we are approaching, if we haven't exceeded 26 billion total real market value for all of those asset types. The department, the appraisal department maintains 50,000 records on properties. So that includes vacant land, but any one property can have multiple structures. So you have a farm piece of ground that's got 20 outbuildings, or a home in the city that's just the home and maybe a attached garage or detached garage. So it varies, but there's about 50,000 real property accounts that we are appraising. In November, we start the new construction for the year. So we're trying to get an idea of how much new value will be added as of January 1st of any given year. So to straddle that date, we start in November and we appraise, inspect, field inspect, and then appraise a new construction from November through May. Some of it straggles towards the end as we try to get them a little more finished, or try to get in touch with contractors or whoever we can get a hold of. So this last year we did, for new construction, we did about 3,500 new construction permits. So that includes an inspection on the ground and then appraisal. And then if we have to follow up, we follow up. So just for that window of new construction between November and May, there was 3,500 inspections. We have 4 appraisers right now. We have 5. Our 5th appraiser just in March passed his license or his state licensing exam. So now he can be, sort of put in the mix. So now we'll have 5 appraisers, which will help tremendously as we go into now the second part of the year, which is reappraisal. So we got the new construction taken care of. Now we're going out, we're doing a reappraisal of county properties that we haven't visited. And unfortunately, in some cases, as long as 20, 25, maybe even longer years. Right now, we are in the west and southwest part of the county. So sort of Sheridan, Willamina out to the coast area, Lincoln County, and then down towards Polk County in that general area. For reappraisal this year, we hope to get about 2,000 inspections completed. That's because it's rural. If we're doing rural property, it takes about twice as long, maybe even longer than urban property. We're in the city of Newburgh, going down the street and doing one after the other. It goes pretty quick if we're out on Willamina Creek Road. It takes a little longer. So all that to say, collectively, you're looking at about 5,500 field inspections this year. And when we bring in an urban area like one of the larger cities or even the small cities, that number could get as high as 8,000 in a year. So 8,000 field inspections in a year, that's a lot of boots on the ground. That's a lot of people on property. And our team does a great job of systematically getting through it and just finding ways to, you know, every appraisal can have its own issues, but you move on to the next one and you just keep going. So that is our appraisal effort for the year so far. When we get back to October, we send out the tax bills. Everybody will be coming back to the office to help citizens with questions about their tax bills or their appraisals. And then we have hearings on appeals. Knock on wood, we haven't had a large number of appeals in quite some years. I think that's due to finally getting reappraisal done, being more transparent on how we value and what the value is driven from when we're talking to property owners. But in 2010, 11, when I first started, we had maybe 300, 400 appeals each year. And now we're down to, I think last year we had 10, maybe 12. So I think that's evident of the program getting better, the education and the outreach is effective. And our team is just tenured and doing a great job. We're bringing a new guy along, but all that's going really well. I'm going to jump to cadastral from that. So that's the appraisal. Cadastral mapping. Cadastral is our tax lot maps. It's all done in GIS now. We don't actually have drafting tables and drawing lines. We do it all in digital format. And Brian Hansberry is our senior cartographer and GIS analyst. And he's just done a tremendous job in taking, over the last year, taking some outdated software and platforms, and with those, some sort of lagging business processes, and bringing them current through a migration using COG as a partner to getting us onto what's called it's an Amazon cloud-based enterprise deployment of our GIS platform. And for the layperson, what that really means is we have better access centrally to our data that we can share with stakeholders. And with that comes the most modern of the platform. So it's the most current of their software features. It's very efficient. There's a lot of automation possibilities. One of the things we used to do, if not weekly, at least multiple times a month, is to take all of our tax lot data, which is the basis for a lot of people's underlying information, planning department, the roads, whoever, they don't need to know who owns what and where. We would take that, we'd bundle it up, we'd put it in a place where somebody else could go and find it on a server and download it and move it. With this new platform, Brian's able to create collaborations where we just seamlessly share data. So the city of McMinnville, city of Newburgh, they now have connection to our data in a way that is more timely, almost instantaneously. When we do our changes, they see it. But also there's less human interaction, very little actually. So that's really been a step forward in the cartography world. Brian's been recognized throughout the state in leading what is this new platform and how it can work for other counties who are trying to solve the same problem. So big kudos to him in this last 8 months since we've talked, whatever it's been. He's really brought that along, and our partners in the cities, the state, COG, they've been very thankful that he's done that. And with the support of some planning help, because they're kind of involved in it too, and Ken and the administration, they were able to help get this project across the finish line. So cartography's done some really cool things there. Besides that project and that update to the GIS platform, we did 166 property revisions, including so far 6 new subdivisions. And with all of that, we've added somewhere in the neighborhood of 420 to maybe 430 new accounts, new tax lots. So we'll know in about 15-20 days, we'll know exactly how many accounts we added. But the subdivisions, the new ones and the extensions off Baker and all that, we've added about 420 accounts. So that's still a pretty good number. Talking to Heather at McMinnville City Planning, and she's telling me that's great, but inventory is running out, and those numbers should come back a little bit in terms of where they're going to expand next. So Newburgh's got sort of a supply issue with vacant land. McMinnville is running out of vacant land, and the idea is maybe in 3 to 5, we'll have fewer subdivisions and maybe more infill. So, but for this year, we added something along those lines in terms of new tax lots. Jumping onto the tax department. So the tax department's responsible for the distribution of, we sent out about 48,000 tax statements. We'll send those out in October. And then we'll start the tax collection late October. Basically, the first 3 weeks of November are the lion's share. It's where everybody's paying on time to make sure they get their 3% discount and that sort of thing. So we collected, a significant amount of payments in the first up to the 15th of November. This year, for this last year, through June 30th of 2023, excuse me, for the prior tax year, we've collected just over 157 million in taxes. And that's to collect and then fund 40, I think we have 46 now with 3 new urban renewals. We have 46 districts that we fund. So the county being one, obviously, as a source, but the cities, the schools, all that stuff. So everybody's looking to us for collection and distribution. We would like to have some of our partners contribute in maybe the expense side of collection and distribution, which we're working on at the legislation. Well, it's over now, we tried, but there's some ideas on taking the burden off the general fund for the county by having some of the districts pay in a sort of a administrative fee. We'll see where that goes, but we're collecting 157. The county gets about 30, and the rest is distributed without any funding coming to our department. So
Derek, there's no workaround where the county can assess an admin fee to the districts, is there?
not that I know of. Not through an ad valorem tax. I don't know what kind of authority we would have to impose a fee. It's an interesting thought.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. I talked a little bit about the new urban renewals. So now we're up to 5. We've got Newburgh and Lafayette were added this year. They will be taxable for this year. That incremental tax portion will go to those new districts this year. The other district we added was the new McMinnville Fire District.
Yeah.
That's sort of net zero because we took it away. So a couple new districts going on the tax side. Okay. So the other thing on the tax, the other 2 major things on the tax side of the house, I call it, it's a tax division, if you will. We have 13,600 properties in deferral, some sort of deferral, farm, forest, wildlife habitat, a couple other programs that we have. Those accounts make up 3.5 billion in our total real market value. And the taxable value for that same 3.5 billion is about 252 million. So there's a notable amount of money deferred, and that's appropriate. Yamhill County is a farm forest county. That makes a lot of sense. But I don't think it should be lost on sort of the gravity of how much is in that program and why it's so relevant to maintain it and make sure that we've got everyone in compliance and that they're in the right program. And over the last 5 years, we've focused on, and we finally this year have touched everybody in deferral. Took us about 5 years to do it. COVID didn't help, but we now have got, we've had somebody on every property to look at, compliance issues and are you in the right program? There was just a significant number of accounts where either somebody acquired the property that had the deferral, they were unaware, or they'd been in forest forever, but transitioned to a vineyard, had no idea they had to do something about that.
Yeah.
And then there was those that just weren't doing anything and had been in because of legacy, had been in the program. So a lot of cleanup, a lot of education, a lot of getting folks in the right program, helping them understand the responsibilities and the liability, because at the end of the day, if we're out of compliance, those paybacks become significant.
Yeah.
Have you had any that you have, basically said you have a liability and this is what you're going to be assessed as a result? So let's say you're not in compliance with your deferral.
Yeah, yes. We, I don't have the number of disqualifications we do every year. But I've seen the disqualification collection, meaning the tax that we collected when they got disqualified. There's been years it's been 600, 700,000.
Wow.
So spread that over however many, but you also have Baker Creek's another example, and Lafayette, Upper Lafayette subdivisions. Those were in deferral forever, and then they come out of deferral because they're making a subdivision. Those are big paybacks.
Yeah.
Those can be a couple $100,000. So there is liability there for sure.
Mm-hmm.
But if you maintain the program, and if you're doing what the intent of the program is there for,
Yeah.
it's pretty straightforward. You know.
How far does the payback go?
It depends if you're a forest or a farm. A farm look back is 10 and a forest is 5. And it goes vice versa, but it also depends on some EFU and non-EFU. There's transfer of ownership, some things happen there, but for the most part, yeah, it's a 5 or 10 year look back, depending on the program. And this is sort of education. I don't want to, I've been asked to keep this sort of under a certain time limit, but it becomes really challenging when a property gets zoned, annexed into the city, gets zoned residential. So the real market value goes through the roof,
Yeah.
but they're in a farm subsidy. They're paying a farm deferral rate of 2,000 an acre instead of 340,000 or 400 an acre. You let that sit undeveloped for a number of years and then make a subdivision. You're doing a 4 or 5 year payback on big numbers, real big numbers. And that's where those couple $100,000 disqualifications come in. And so, but we have to be on top of the program. It was ignored, frankly.
Mhm.
People were put in the 70s, 80s, early 90s, and nothing was really done about it. It was just assumed everything was, fine.
Yeah.
So we've done a lot of cleanup on that. Megan in our special assessment group, she's done a wonderful job of sort of wrapping this up and putting us on a plan to keep in front of it so that it doesn't get as far behind. And when we have properties sell, we'll be like, hey, by the way, new owner.
Yeah.
So you're aware. So that's going really well. The other part of the tax department that's not necessarily directly send a bill, collect tax is the exemptions. So we have, Yamhill County has 3,500 properties with either a whole or partial exemption. They represent 1.5 billion in real market value and 900 million in taxable value. So notably higher because it's not farmland that's in deferral, it's churches and schools and county-owned buildings and everything else that's exempt, that has a value that could be taxable in theory, but is not. Those are the largest ones: public body, state, county, cities. Business personal property is actually a pretty big one. Religious exemptions, and then charitable, literary, and scientific are the main groups. There are another 35 exemption programs maybe, but we just don't have a lot of accounts in those. Those ones I just shared carry the weight of the 3,500 accounts. So we have to monitor those too. Similar reasons. Are they in compliance? Did it change hands and they're no longer using it in an exempt way? Was it a church and now it's a CPA office? Now it's that sort of thing. So again, another program that was sort of forgotten about and needed some attention. We spent 5 years on that also. We're not quite done with that one yet. We have another year to go, I believe. But it's the same results. We're finding all sorts of, we need to educate people on the requirements. We're cleaning up the files to make them current and in compliance. And that hasn't had as many, you're not an exempt, you're out, sort of repercussions like the farm deferral did, where we didn't, people weren't farming anymore. There was less of that. So really that was about, have you applied under the right statute? Are you applying to be exempt as a church? Are you a church? So on and so forth. So that was more cleanup of the program than it was sort of adding people or removing people. But all that to say, with 900 million taxable value on the table, it's very relevant in terms of what we should be monitoring. So that's tax. We talked about cartography. We talked about appraisal. The last few things I have, we've completely transitioned out of any COVID pandemic response. I'm projecting no long-term operational impacts. I don't see any lingering issues, barring anything that comes back with who knows what kind of orders could happen down the road. But for now, we're all out of that. We're moving forward. On a personnel standpoint, we supplied the organizational chart when we did the budget. No changes from then till now. We have one vacant position we are working creatively to try to fill. We just this last 2 months, we've completed the 2023 CAFA application to the DOR. That'll bring about 375,000, maybe 400 to our office to help subsidize funding. And we also completed the 2003 ratio study, which is an annual report we have to do every year. That sort of verifies that our appraisal program is working and that we've got 100% of real market value on the properties that we're appraising. It's very statistical driven. It's a lot of analytics. Sean Beaton has been doing that for 5 or 7 years for us, but he's 30 years experience. So we're fortunate to have him on board, putting together a really nice study, and the results are very impressive. Starting to wonder if they're going to think we're cooking the books because the numbers are that good, to be honest. Ratio study. So really, that's about it. I'd like to give a thanks to my team. I think I have a wonderful team that I'm just grateful for, that we've had long tenure. We've got great personnel, knowledgeable. They have a passion to exceed expectations, and we do that on a daily basis. So I'm very grateful to them, and we're doing great. So any questions?
Thank you. So last year, I think you said we had a 96 or 97% collection rate.
Yeah.
Does that include the personal property tax?
Mhm.
Okay, so it's all of it.
It's all of it,
Okay.
yeah. And we're a little higher this year. So
Okay.
not much. I mean, it's still in that 95, 96 range, but
Okay.
half of a percentages we're still collecting. We've always had a strong collection rate, even back through the lulls of 2008 and
Mhm.
9. Housing market fell out. We just didn't see a lot of, you know, we've got a strong tax base, I guess is the way to put it.
Okay, any questions?
No, thank you. And your office always seems to have such a great esprit de corps.
Yeah, they
You
do.
guys have a lot of spirit over there
Yeah, thank you.
and a lot of fun.
Yeah. Well, it's hard to love the tax man sometimes. We just we gotta keep people on the positive side of things. Okay,
Thank you, Derek.
Cool.
you
Thanks,
guys, thank you.
Thanks a lot, Derek.
14 minutes.
Okay, item F is our work session. There's nothing today. Item G is the consent agenda. Do I have a motion to approve?
So moved.
Okay. Any discussion?
No.
The only thing I had was a note on the fentanyl campaign. So if memory serves, I think that was supposed to be completed by June 30th
Well, the funding,
and up and running.
are you talking about the funding component? or
Well, I
the-
just made a note because that was related to fentanyl funding, but
Oh, the actual
the county,
product.
yeah,
No, I've not heard that we have anything to show at this point. Last time we had a check-in, I believe there was, it was moving along and they were working on the website. And that's all I have at this point.
okay. Well, maybe we can get an update on that now
Okay.
that we're into July.
Mm-hmm.
Other than that, I don't have any questions on the consent. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed, same sign. Great, motion passes. Thanks. Item H is old business. We have nothing under old business. Item I is other business. I1 is consideration of approval of intergovernmental agreement number PO-44000-000200619 between the Yamhill County Assessor's Office and the Department of Consumer Business Services to allow the Yamhill County Assessor's Office to provide manufactured home ownership and title transfer services retroactive to July 1st of 2023 through June 30th of 2026. And I will move approval of item I1. Is there further discussion?
No.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 All opposed, same sign. Great, thank you. Motion passes.
They need to update their language in there for getting a receipt transferred back to the state. There was a fax, just fax it in. A part of everything else.
What's
It's just
that?
like, what is that?
Fax machine.
Messenger it over.
One day they'll update it.
Okay. Item I2 is consideration of approval of intergovernmental agreement number 180033 between Yamhill County Local Public Health Authority and the Oregon Health Authority for the financing of public health services in the amount of 1 billion. Well, that's not right. Okay, we're missing a period there. So it's excuse me, 1 million $1 billion. Woohoo. $1,148,882.29. Retroactive effective to July 1st of 2023 through June 30th of 2025.
And Chair, this is because there's additional funding expected for some of the program elements that are already listed in this. So I would move approval.
Okay. Any further discussion?
None.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed, same sign. Thank you. Motion passes. Item I3, consideration of approval for change order number 1 to an agreement between Yamhill County and Hicks Striping and Curbing LLC, Board Order 22-309 in the amount of $95,000. Do I have a motion to approve?
So moved.
Okay, further discussion?
So if you guys had any questions on
I-
it, but it's just
I do.
basically, oh, do you?
Well, because 95,000 is basically almost a third of the original contract.
So they're adding more striping to the new paved jobs this year. This is actually a contract that was for 2022 that they didn't finish but got extended, and the new striping is going to be at the original 2022 cost. So it's actually a pretty good deal since they kept the original cost. And they're just adding on the new striping this year for the new paving jobs. So that's where the 95 comes in.
Okay, so that's not something we have to go out for another bid on. We just extend the contract. Okay,
Yeah, we can.
Seems
amend
pretty,
it to-
Mark emailed me if I had any questions. I had none because it seemed pretty straightforward to me.
Yeah.
And when somebody's willing to do same cost and things aren't going up, I'm like, yep, sounds good. So
Okay.
Okay.
all right. Any further discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed, same sign. Great, motion passes. Thank you. All right, do we need a quick break?
No.
Nope. Okay. I don't know if we're waiting for Ken Friday. Are
Is
we?
Ken coming?
I left a message for him yesterday. I didn't hear back. I'm assuming he was. I hope he is.
Okay,
Because
well, maybe we
Let's-
take a 5 minute
let's
and see
wait
if
for it
he's
because I
coming.
have a
Yeah.
few questions that
Okay.
he's gonna.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right,
He
we
is
will-
here. I know he's
Yeah.
here.
Yes, sir.
So
We'll
okay.
recess until about 10, I don't know, 10:40.
Probably wasn't expecting us to be done so
Yeah.
soon.
That's right.
Okay. Okay, we are coming back into our agenda. It is 10:40 and we are picking up under item J, which is our public hearing. So I will go ahead and, well, the docket is C-21-22, an appeal of the planning director's denial of a request for a conditional use to establish a short-term rental on a vineyard property. The applicant / appellant is Frank Quinn, I'm gonna probably get this wrong, Steppen Jr., represented by Mike Gilardi. Okay. So I will go ahead and open the hearing. Are there any abstentions by members of the board? None.
None.
Any parties object to the jurisdiction of the board to hear the matter before it? Okay. Does any member of the board need to announce and state on the record any substance of ex parte contact or site visits?
None.
Okay. And so you'll have our planning director, Ken Friday, read the statements required by law. Thank you.
Yes, Oregon law requires that persons who attend a land use hearing be advised of certain rights and duties before the hearing begins. First, with regard to the standards for approval, state law ORS 197.797 requires that we list the applicable substantive criteria that must be met in order for the county to approve the application. The standards will be listed by myself in a few moments as part of the staff report. Testimony, arguments, and evidence must be directed towards the standards for approval. Second, the raise it or waive it rule. Under Oregon law, any issue that might be raised in an appeal of the county's decision in this matter must be raised before the record of this hearing is closed. Failure to raise an issue accompanied by statements or evidence sufficient to afford the decision makers and the parties an opportunity to respond to the issue precludes appeal to the board based on that issue. Third, and this is directed to the applicant, under ORS 197.796, failure of the applicant to raise constitutional or other issues related to proposed conditions of approval, again with sufficient specificity to allow the county to respond to the issue, precludes an action for damages in circuit court. Finally, I'll note that under Oregon law, and because this is the initial evidentiary hearing in this matter, any participant, that is anyone who submits oral or written testimony during this hearing, may, before the record is closed, request an opportunity to present additional evidence, arguments, or testimony regarding the application. The request must be made prior to the time the chair announces that the hearing is closed.
Thank you. And that brings us to the staff report.
Yes, as you've noted, this application is a request to use an existing dwelling as a short-term rental under the home occupation standards. The applicant is proposing to construct a dwelling on an adjacent property as the caretaker's residence and has approval for that through a Measure 49. Access to the property is from Morale Drive. Tax lot 2436-1600 has the dwelling, and tax lot 3402-100 currently has an agricultural building with 28 acres of vineyard planted. Surrounding parcels are zoned for exclusive farm use, and these are predominantly in agricultural production, specifically livestock, grass, hay, and vineyards. The applicant has indicated that the dwelling is provided water by an on-site well, and there's an on-site septic system. Fire protection is from the Yamhill Rural Fire Protection District. For this to be approved, the request needs to satisfy sections 402.04I, 402.07A, 1004.01, and 1202.02 of the Yamhill County zoning ordinance related to conditional use and home occupation standards. That ends this portion of the staff report.
Okay. And next is the applicant's case. If you could please state your name and address for the record, appreciate it.
Morning, Commissioners. My name is Michael Gilardi. I'm the Steppen family's legal counsel. My law firm's address for the record is 4710 Village Plaza Loop, Suite 165 in Eugene, 97401. The applicant Quinn Steppen is here with us on video.
Mhm.
Mr. Steppen wasn't able to be here in person because of family holiday plans, but he is here via video. And what I'd like to do is turn this over to him to explain to you his family's history with the Duvert Vineyard property and their plans for the future. And then once Mr. Steppen is done, I'd like to briefly address the legal and policy issues in this
Okay.
case.
Sounds good.
Good
Welcome,
morning.
Mr. Steppen. Can you hear us?
Yes, I can hear you. Can you hear me? Can you hear me?
We can't hear you if you are speaking. Oh, maybe.
All right. I am speaking.
There we go. Now,
Okay.
so if you
So
could,
You
if
can hear me now?
yes. If you
Okay.
state your name and address for the record, and then and then feel free to go into your statement.
Okay. Well, good morning. My name is Quinn Steppen, 18,000 Northeast Morelli Drive in Yamhill, Oregon. As I said, my name is Quinn Steppen. I've been married to my wife, Debbie, for 43 years. Together, we are the owners of the Duvert Vineyard. I've written you all a letter, which was filed yesterday, and my comments will generally reflect what is in that letter. Debbie and I made our first trip to Oregon in 2018 and immediately felt welcomed by the people and inspired by the natural beauty of the landscape. After years for looking at property in California, we made an offer to acquire Duvert on our first visit to Yamhill. Duvert was and is a special place, but in 2018, it needed significant investment to reach its potential. Debbie and I like to work together. We have energy and passion to be good stewards of the land, and we are currently executing a long-term plan that was developed in consultation with local experts. Over the last 5 years, we've made significant progress on that long-term plan. Our first priority was and is the vineyard. We are farmers. We sell 98% of the grapes on our site to local wineries. We have invested significantly to improve soil and vine health, working closely with Results Partners and Daniel Fay. And then with improved grape quality, we made the decision to double the size of the vineyard, and we now have approximately 28 to 29 acres of our 80 acres are currently under vine. The vineyard has the potential to potentially add 1 to 3 more additional acres, but our plans to date are on hold to do that. To date, grape sales have not been profitable, but we hope as the vines mature and our reputation for producing quality premium grapes is established, it will be so. Our second priority was to begin restoration of our oak groves. We joined the Oak Accord in 2019. Duvert has 120 oak trees on site, most of which were being overwhelmed by English hawthorns and blackberries. We hired James Reedman of Reedman Stewardship to develop and execute a plan to ensure the long-term health of our oaks and savannas. We also built a walking path on the property through the oak groves to allow family and guests to enjoy the walk, quite frankly. And I covered some of those items really to emphasize that we are acting as good stewards of the property, and we're excited and enthusiastic to be, to have the privilege, quite frankly, of being a landowner and a homeowner in Oregon. Our third priority was to build a home on the property for our family. We have a close family of 16, including children, spouses, and grandchildren. We believe it's important to create occasions and spaces for our family to gather together, and we do so regularly. Duvert was designed and built for our family. However, when we are not personally using it, we'd like to occasionally rent the property to let others enjoy the Willamette Valley as much as we do. Any rental income will be invested back in the property. Our house was permitted as a residential dwelling, and it was built according to our permits. We see many short-term rentals available in Yamhill County on numerous websites. As we would like to rent our home and be in compliance with Yamhill's regulations, we applied for a home occupation permit in October 2022 to authorize short-term rentals. Since that time, we have worked hard with staff to address their concerns. We are committed to operate in a responsible manner that does not impact our neighbors and will provide a safe environment for our guests. Debbie and I asked the board to support our farm and reverse the staff's decision. Mike will now provide additional information on our journey, relevant other cases, and our legal position on our permit request. So I want to thank you for your time and consideration. And we appreciate you hearing us today, and we look forward to a favorable response. Mike?
Thank you.
Hello again. Let me just, before I get into it, do you have any questions for Mr. Steppen before we continue?
Commissioners?
No.
No.
Okay.
We're good.
All right.
Thanks.
Well, hello again. For the record, this is Mike Gilardi. I want to start by saying that I have a lot of respect for the way that Yamhill County has managed its land use system and for planning staff's work in particular. I've been working on rural land management and natural resource issues throughout the state for 15 years. I work with a lot of local governments, and I've always found Yamhill County to be among the best local governments to work with. I think that in my experience, staff makes good, practical, reasonable decisions and is responsive. So I don't criticize the staff lightly, and I don't like being in the position of having to appeal a staff decision. But with all due respect, in this case, staff got it wrong. The staff's decision is not legally sound, and it's not good policy for the county. As you heard from Mr. Steppen, this particular short-term rental, it helps to maintain the Steppen's farm. It also provides a service to the local farm economy through wine tourism. There's a letter in the record that we submitted yesterday from a local winery, AFI, who's a customer of Duver, and it provides some more evidence about the importance of supplemental income to help maintain vineyard lands and the importance of wine tourism locally and the opportunity that this particular rental provides to help bring in folks who really appreciate local wine and want to be committed customers. And then finally, we've demonstrated that there's no impact to the neighbors here or to local farming practices. So there's no reason to deny this permit. And certainly you all have the legal authority to interpret your own rules to approve this. What I'd like to do here initially is just quickly walk through the new evidence that we submitted yesterday. You may or may not have had a chance to review that, and that will highlight the policy issues that in this case. So first of all, so you all got a record from staff, I believe, on about June 30th, and that had sort of everything to date. There's been a letter from Friends of Yamhill County since then, and then our package from yesterday. So looking at our package from yesterday, there's a cover letter for me, and then Exhibit A is Mr. Steppen's letter, which he just described. Exhibit B are some building permit records for the Steppen dwelling. The staff's decision rests on this conclusion that it's not a dwelling. And it's not factual. There's a land use permit for a replacement dwelling. There's building permits for a single family dwelling. The home was built as a dwelling, and as Mr. Steppen has testified, it's used as a dwelling by the Steppen family. So that conclusion in the staff report, it's not factual, and it's also not legally sound because it contradicts the permits that the county has issued. You can't use a later land use process to sort of reinvent prior decisions that the local government has made. That's called a collateral attack, or collateral estoppel is the more formal legal term. So that's Exhibit B. Exhibit C and D kind of get to the heart of the policy issue here. Exhibit C is a short-term rental approval that the county issued 2 years ago for what's called the Tabula Rasa farmhouse. The facts in that case are nearly identical to this case. It's a recently built house on farmland, and it's rented as a single unit. It's not a bed and breakfast. I mean, as a practical matter, it's not a bed and breakfast where you rent individual rooms and you provide, common breakfast for the guests. And the caretaker of that short-term rental lives on the adjacent property on a separate dwelling. Facts are nearly identical to this case. By contrast, we've got Exhibit D, which is search results for short-term rentals in the county. And what those show is that there are purportedly 382 vineyard homes, 472 countryside homes, and 389 farms available for short-term rental on Airbnb. Now, I'm sure there's overlap in those categories, and maybe some of them aren't really on farm or forest land, but the point is there's a lot of them. Similarly, Verbo shows 121 rural properties for rent in Yamhill County. To my knowledge, and I've discussed this with staff, the Tabula Rasa application is the only permit application that the county has received for a short-term rental. So you got a lot of people out there who are renting their homes, in violation of land use rules without permits. So that really brings us to the policy question in this case. We believe that we've put forward an application that is thorough and is responsible and would set a good example for the county to be able to permit at least some of these existing short-term rentals in a lawful and in a responsible way. So we urge you to do that. The alternative, I see two alternatives for you. One would be, you deny this application and then you go out and actually enforce the rules against all these other people who are renting these places without permits. I submit that would be pretty difficult. Or the third option is you deny this and then you don't enforce the law. And then the consequence of that is that you sort of incentivize people to go out there and flout the law. They see, here's the Steppens. They tried to do the right thing. They tried to get a permit. It was a really expensive, time-consuming process, and it didn't work. So let's not do that. Let's keep with the status quo and hope that we don't get in trouble. And so I submit to you that that's not good policy. So the right thing to do here is to approve this permit and to set a good example for others. Two more exhibits from our package yesterday. Mr. Steppen mentioned the Oak Accord. We've got the report in there from the assessment that was done on the property, and Mr. Steppen's letter indicates that they've done nearly all of the restoration that was called for in that report. And then the last thing, Exhibit F, I already mentioned, which is the letter of support from Jessica Mazeko of the AFI winery. So I will leave it at that for now. Certainly happy to answer any questions that you have. Want to hear what others have to say this morning, and then we'll reserve the rest of time for rebuttal.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, is there any further testimony in support of the application? Okay, hearing none, we will move on to the appellant's case. And it looks like we have received one piece of testimony in opposition from Friends of Yamhill County. So Rob, did you want to come forward and offer oral comment too? Okay. If you could please state your name and address for the record. Appreciate it.
My name is Rob Halliburton. I'm representing Friends of Yamhill County. PO Box 1083 McMinnville. We're here primarily to support the staff decision, and I just wanted to highlight some of our main points.
Okay.
We had a June 30 letter. I think you got it at
Yes.
least earlier today. The Friends of Yamhill County agrees with the conclusions in the staff report. The staff report is correct that the county's code prohibits the use of the dwelling as accommodations used for transient occupancy. In this case, the home occupation provisions in statute and the county zoning ordinance relating to bed and breakfast facilities provide the only pathway to approve short-term rentals in the EF zone. And this request doesn't comply with those criteria. I'm going to skip over a lot of this. And like I say, I'm just hitting the high points here. Or what I hope are the high points. The limitations of on the use of the dwelling for a home occupation are not contingent on how the dwelling was approved. In the appeal, there was talk about it being a replacement dwelling and how that confers it with some status. But we disagree with that the home occupation criteria apply to the excuse me, to the structure regardless of how that structure was approved. And the county's limitations on conditional use home occupations apply equally to all dwellings. So those were really the main points we were trying to make in the letter. We did go into considerably more detail, but I think that they fit under those categories. Responding a little bit to what you heard this morning about this proposed use providing a service to the area, we would submit that service can be provided in a zone that actually allows the use. It doesn't have to be in this location. And we would also remind the board that you're not setting policy today, you're applying it. And that therefore you're limited to looking at the criteria, applying the facts to those criteria. And we believe that those criteria and the facts show that the proposed use doesn't comply. So that, unless you have any questions, that's all we have today.
Thank you. Any questions, commissioners?
None.
Okay.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Okay, is there any other testimony in opposition to the application? Okay, seeing none, we will move on to public agency reports.
There were no additional public agency reports submitted during the open record period.
Okay, thank you. And any rebuttal by the applicant?
Hello again, Mike Gilardi for the applicant. I want to respond to what you heard from Mr. Halliburton about, the criteria that apply. I agree with Mr. Halliburton and Friends of Yamhill that the home occupation criteria apply, and we meet them. There's nothing that indicates that we don't meet those criteria. As you know, what you can do on farmland is a mix of state and local law. There's two lists of things you can do under state law, under the state EFU statutes. First list are permitted uses, second list are conditional uses. Home occupation is specifically listed as a conditional use in the EFU zone. And there's a specific statute about what the criteria are for home occupations. It has to be managed by a resident of the property. It has to have fewer than 5 employees, and it has to be in a structure that's otherwise allowed in the zone. Those are basically the criteria. Here we have a structure, a dwelling that is authorized. It was properly permitted through both land use and building permits. It's being used in accordance with those permits as a home for the Steppen family. We're going to have fewer than 5 employees, and the caretaker is going to reside on the property, exactly the same as the tabula rasa. So we meet the criteria that apply here. We've offered a set of conditions of approval to ensure that this operates in a lawful and a responsible manner. There was one comment that was received from a neighbor who expressed some concern about whether the Steppens might have big events there. And certainly that is not the intent. And we offered a condition of approval that would prevent events unless they got a special permit for a particular event. So The Steppens certainly want to be good neighbors. There's nothing to indicate that there's going to be an impact on the neighborhood. And there's nothing to indicate that we don't meet the criteria. Again, the staff's decision rests on this idea that it's not a dwelling. And again, as I said, it's not factual, and it's also inconsistent with the permits the county's issued in this case.
Thank you. I want to be clear make sure I'm clear about
Sure.
something. So these two structures are on the same tract.
On the same track. That's right.
So the current dwelling, let's see, well, let's start with the caretaker residence.
Sure.
That is not built yet,
It's not built yet.
but it is a replacement. It's being rebuilt under a replacement dwelling permit. Is that correct?
Let me clarify, Chair
Okay.
Bershauer. So the current house is a replacement
Okay,
of the house that was historically on the property.
okay,
That house has been constructed and is in use by the Steppen family. On the adjacent parcel, which is in the same ownership, there is a measure 49 home site right. And what we proposed in order to comply with the home occupation criteria of having an on-site resident caretaker is that the Steppens would use that measure 49 right to build a small caretaker house, which meets those rules. And I think we also felt like that was a sort of modest, reasonable use of that measure 49 right. It's an opportunity for the family to bring someone in who can help care for the property, not only the home occupation, the short-term rental, but also the broader vineyard and the conservation efforts.
okay. And would that caretaker be conducting farming activity, or would they just be a caretaker and manager of the short-term rental?
I think the full scope of what that caretaker would do has not been defined yet. Certainly, they would be managing the short-term dwelling as well as the broader property. And what currently the Steppens have a vineyard manager results partners, as Mr. Steppen said, which is a well-known, respected local company.
Okay. Okay, any questions for Mr. Gilardi?
No, thank you.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Oh. Sure.
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes, thank you.
Okay. I was just gonna make, in addition to the vineyard, we've also planted some olive trees on the site and some hazelnut trees that we've infected with the truffle spore. And so I imagine that the caretaker would take care of the non-vineyard activity that we have going on the site. And at some point in time, we'd actually like to expand into a garden as well. And so they would have responsibilities outside of the vineyard, as Michael suggested.
Thank you.
Mhm.
Okay, let's see, that brings us to staff recommendation.
I guess for the record, I do want to say that, my preference would be to approve this and recommend approval of it. But there's a Clackamas County decision that was issued in, I think, June 23rd of 2022, which was 6 months after the Frank Foti decision for approval of Mike Gilardi is correct, of something exactly the same or very close to being the same as what's proposed here. But the court case in the Clackamas County decision, they concluded that absent any identification by the county of the authority in ORS 215.283, LCDC's rules implementing that statute for allowing short-term rental use of dwelling units for guest houses on exclusive farm use land, that use is not allowed under ORS 215.283. And in the decision, I didn't mean to conclude that it wasn't a dwelling, but that it wasn't being used as a home. And the decision in Clackamas County is a dwelling or residence requires use as a home occupied by someone that is going to be managing that home and use as a home occupation. A home is occupied by a group of people sharing a household, not by individuals and groups who share no social legal relationship on a long-term or permanent basis, not in a transitory way. And the decision just made it clear that you can't do short-term rentals. To me, it made it clear that you can't do short-term rentals in the exclusive farm use zone. And I am concerned about this, the justice of this and the ripple effect that it might have, because we do have some out there that are approved, like Frank Fode's. And we have conditions on these that say that if you're going to go to sell them in the future, you've got to reapply and get them reapproved. And I always saw that as just being, hey, be aware of these conditions of approval, like, getting the water tested, et cetera. Well, we have some that don't meet this standard and we probably can't reapprove them. And so whatever business they, home occupation might be building up, they won't be able to transfer to someone else. Also, I'm concerned about the I guess, justice of this, in that Mike Gillard is exactly correct. These folks applied for it, and we've got dozens of them out in the county that no one has applied for. And friends complained about something else with the Brooks Winery recently, and I did an investigation on that, and we had a short-term rental there, and I informed them that you can't have a short-term rental there, and they've ceased it. But it is it would be a significant effort for us to go and do enforcement on them. But we do those by complaint. And so if we get complaints on them, we will try to address them. But I am concerned about, penalizing someone who's actually trying to apply and trying to abide by the law, and not penalizing those that are not abiding by the law. That all being said, based on the law and the interpretation by a court of appeals, I recommend denial of this request.
So the tabula rasa decision, is that the one that's being appealed?
No, there's a different one that's being
Okay.
appealed. That's Grange Hill
Okay.
is under appeal, and there's another one that is pending that's similar to it, that's kind of on hold. But this one's not under appeal.
Okay, so I will go ahead and close the hearing and open us up for deliberation. Commissioners, I'm going to start with any questions that we might have for Ken.
Yep.
Lots of questions. Okay. Commissioner Johnston, do you want to start off?
Yeah, so if the replacement dwelling that is being applied for to be the short-term rental, if it was could it fall under the Measure 49? And if it did, is there different stipulations for Measure 49 on whether you can have a short-term rental?
No, the Measure 49 approval would only allow a dwelling, and that the subsequent use of the dwelling or partitioning that might be allowed under Measure 49 needs to abide by whatever the land use laws
You got
are
it,
in
okay.
effect.
So it doesn't affect use
Yeah,
then,
it doesn't
okay.
affect that use.
You have more questions?
I do, but I'm processing, so go ahead.
All right,
Mr. Sarah.
thank you. And can you, so I just want to make clear, and so Mike, can you just confirm that the structure has been occupied as a dwelling?
Commissioner Starrett, I think we need to reopen the,
Well, I just want, before I ask Ken for clarification, I want to make sure because that's going to hinge on my question. So has it been occupied? Okay.
If I need to reopen the hearing, you should probably reopen the hearing if you want to ask those questions of the applicant.
Okay.
Sorry.
I think Ken can answer that.
Okay,
You know,
It's totally fine to do that.
All right,
I can only answer that it's my understanding that it has been used as a dwelling for their family. But it's not an ongoing thing that they use it as a dwelling.
okay, I want to,
Yeah, but I'd like
Okay,
to
sure.
have
So then
Mike Gallardi answer that.
reopen this.
so I'm going to pause our deliberation and go back and reopen the hearing and open up for questions of Mr. Gilardi. Okay,
Okay, so the dwelling has been used as a home prior to this, right? Or is currently being used.
Yes, Commissioner, the dwelling is used as a home for the Steppen family, and we have written testimony from Mr. Steppen and photographs in the written record about that. The answer is yes. Now Mr. Steppen also has a home in the Chicago area, which is where he is now. But this is a home for the Steppen family, and they use it as such.
Okay, thank you.
And it was built as a home, permitted as a home, built as a home, used as a home.
Thank you.
And what I would request is to have an additional legal argument to respond to Mr. Friday's discussion of the Clackamas County case. And I think that Friends of Yamhill County should be able to have legal argument on that as well, if they like.
Are you requesting to have the record left open for 7 days?
No, I'm requesting that right now we have a little bit further discussion about the legal issue. I didn't want to give you a seminar earlier, but I feel like it's important to respond. And we have done so in writing, but you may not have had a chance to see this. But, Mr. Friday's argument is that the Clackamas County decision from the Court of Appeals prohibits this, and it's not true. There's a specific footnote in that decision, and we've highlighted this. It's in the record.
Mhm.
And what the footnote says is that Thousand Friends of Oregon, which is who brought the Clackamas County case, Thousand Friends of Oregon argued to the court that you can have a short-term rental as a home occupation if you follow the home occupation rules. And what the court says in the footnote is, we are not deciding that issue today because that's not the case before us. What Clackamas County did was they wrote new rules to essentially create a new use for short-term rentals. So recall the two lists of things you can do. Clackamas County basically said, we're going to redefine a dwelling so that you can have a new use of a dwelling as a short-term rental under certain conditions. The Court of Appeals said, no, you can't do that. It's not on the list. If you want to do something on farmland, it has to be on the list in the EFU statutes. Home occupation is on the list. So the staff's interpretation of the law is not consistent with even what Thousand Friends of Oregon has argued to the courts in recent years.
But my understanding is that it was denied from the paper that I wrote because somebody's not going to occupy the home, not whether it's a home or not. It's nobody's going to occupy the home, which didn't satisfy the conditional use for it to be a short-term rental.
There's nothing in the law, in the state or local rules that says that everybody has to be in the house all the time. Our position is this, and the facts are that this is a home for the Steppen family. It's used as a home. And what they're doing is they are asking for the opportunity to rent it out when they're not using it, to provide supplemental income for their
Yep.
farm.
No, I understand that. And I don't know what maybe I just interpret what Ken, denied it as differently, but to me, Ken was denying it because somebody wasn't going to be in the home when
Mhm.
the renters were going to be there. Not that it's not a home. It's just, here's the one condition that you won't satisfy. And it said in the application that they won't be there part of the short-term rental, that they have to be, if you want it as a home occupation, to be a short-term rental.
That would be your choice interpreting your own local rules. That's certainly not required by state law. And so I submit to you that that's not the right policy here, and you should not do that. You should not have that interpretation.
For the sake of discussion.
And that was not the interpretation 2 years ago in the Tabula Rasa case. And I'm sorry for interrupting.
I want to make sure I'm getting my thoughts straight here. So for the sake of discussion, though, when it comes to a B&B, we do require that. We do require a caretaker to reside inside of the structure up to 9 rooms that are rented out for short-term use. Okay, so this is different in some ways because it's specifically a home occupation request.
He's presenting that it's different because it's a
Okay.
home occupation request.
But even for the home occupation request, that's why it was denied, because they weren't going to be on site with the renters, right?
No,
Okay, no.
Sorry, sorry. Mr. Steppen, did you want to say something?
yeah, as I understand it, and Ken, if you could correct me if I'm wrong, I think you said if we built the second structure, the caretaker cottage, and if someone was resided in the caretaker cottage and was responsible for the party, that's okay in terms of having somebody on site and an adjacent parcel that we own. That is not the reason why you denied the permit, as I understand it. Is that correct?
That is what I explained to you when I was taking in the application. Since that time, there's been a Yamhill County decision that reflected back to this Court of Appeals decision for Clackamas County that, to me, states that you can't do a short-term rental in the farm zone. And so what I told you about, yeah, we've done this before where Tabla Rosa Farms has a residence next door, and you can have a caretaker next door. That changed based on the court decision. I
don't remember your written denial to us specifically covering that in my mind. I thought you said we met the criteria in if we had someone living as a caretaker in the cottage. I thought that was specifically included. And what I thought you were denying it for was because it was not being used as a home by the Steppen family, which in fact it is.
It's not being used as a home when the home occupation is being conducted.
Right.
In other words, it's not being resided in and managed by someone who's living there.
I don't know, Mike, can you look at that language, or can you look at that language? I thought it specifically said that we would meet the criteria if we had a caretaker in the cottage. I thought that's what the response was written as.
Do we want to take a minute to verify or?
Can we do questions in between? For Ken?
Well, I want to make sure we're not getting into deliberation. If we have more questions for Mr. Gilardi, then
Oh, I have to have a bunch of questions for Ken. Is it?
can I ask a clarifying question about the existing home? You mentioned that the family has 16 individuals in it. It's a rather large
Yeah.
family. Is the home built to accommodate that size of a family? Is it a large home? And with numerous bedrooms where there could be numerous people staying in terms of a short-term rental, but of bedrooms, so to speak?
So if I can answer that, I mean, there are 5 bedrooms in the house, and then there's a family bunk room where there's 2 bunk beds associated with that. So I've got each of my daughters has 4 kids in their family, so their parents can have a king size bed next to them, and then the kids in each family or one of the families could stay there. And then there are 4 other bedrooms in the house. So we don't quite fit 16, but without using some couches and things like that.
Okay, but the overall layout of the house is or is not conducive to a bed and breakfast, let's say.
It was not built as a bed and breakfast. It's size but it is a house that has 5 bedrooms plus a bunk room.
Okay, thank you.
So if the board doesn't have any other questions for Mr. Gilardi, you did reopen the hearing. He did ask that Friends of Game Hill County also be given an opportunity to respond to anything that he might have added. So I don't know if it's appropriate now, unless you've got some other things you want to add.
I just wanted to make sure if you wanted to respond
Yeah.
to Mr. Steppens' comment about the language, that's
Right.
Sure. So I will leave it to Mr. Friday to clarify whether what he's saying now is the same as what was said in the staff report. Certainly, this is your decision. And so, you know, you're going to have your rationale for your decision. So what was said in the staff report is not determinative. But I think the key thing is on page 5 of the staff report. The criteria here is 1004 of the YCZO, which is the home occupation standards. Subcategory is C. And the criterion is the home occupation will be operated substantially in the dwelling or in other buildings normally associated with uses permitted in the zone. And there's a paragraph there that reads regarding again, this is in the staff's words. Regarding criterion C, the applicant has stated that the proposed home occupation will be conducted substantially from the existing dwelling. Section 200 of the YCZO defines a dwelling as a building containing one dwelling unit designed for and occupied by one family only. The term dwelling includes a manufactured dwelling, but does not include a hotel, motel, travel trailer, boarding, lodging or rooming house, private hospital, rest home, or nursing home, or other accommodations used for transient occupancy. The primary use of the dwelling will be for transient occupancy and therefore does not meet the definition of a dwelling. Therefore, the request does not satisfy the standard. I think that's the key reasoning from the staff report. Now, whether that's the same reasoning we've heard today, I'm not sure. But again, this would be your decision. And I would say, you know, again, these are your own local rules. And you have a substantial amount of discretion to interpret the meaning of your own local rules. That's the Saporin case from the Oregon Supreme Court about 10 years ago, clarified that standard.
okay. Thank you. Since we did reopen the hearing, I want to invite Mr. Halliburton up if you do want to offer any rebuttal. Okay, thank you. Okay, so I will go ahead and close the hearing again, and we will pick up back at deliberation. And Commissioner Starrett, you had questions for Mr. Friday.
Yes, thank you, Chair. A question about the tabula rasa application. What's the distinction other than, or is the only distinction the Friends decision?
The main distinction is the Friends decision and the Clackamas County decision being 6 months after the tabula rasa decision being made.
And a question, which there's a footnote here saying there was a legislative change to uses allowed in resource zones, saying a building or portion thereof with one or more rooms designed for residential occupancy by one family, and a dwelling unit may be occupied by one family. But anyhow, it talks about or by no more than 15 persons for a period that does not exceed 30 consecutive nights by any one person. These are not going to be the same people for 30 nights or more. So I'm just wondering about that distinction.
Yeah, and I don't really have a response just because I haven't looked at that portion of it. I guess I'm not sure how to respond to that. I will say that I think the heart of the denial is on page 2. And there, a portion of it is on page 5, but that on page 2 in addressing 1202.02A, it says home occupations are listed as a conditional use in the EF80 district. The county processes applications that request providing guests with overnight accommodations as bed and breakfast under Yamhill County zoning ordinance section 1012 and the home occupation standards section 1004. However, in this application, no one will be occupying the residence where the rooms will be rented, but they will occupy a dwelling that is yet to be constructed on an adjacent parcel that is part of the tract. The applicant has stated in their supplemental narrative that the B&B criteria are not applicable because the proposed home occupation does not have the characteristics of a B&B, since the applicant proposes to rent the dwelling as a single unit and does not propose single room lodging or meal services typical for a B&B. The application would not meet the B&B criteria since nobody is living in the dwelling that is being rented. And then I go on to cite the Clackamas County case. So I guess, you know, if the board wants to interpret that we can do short-term rentals, I'm fine with that. I just don't think it will hold up on appeal. But I also would look forward to the adventure if the board decides to go ahead and approve it.
And Ken, just to follow up for that, under your staff report, under home occupation provisions and analysis C3, says the home occupation will be operated substantially in the dwelling or in other buildings normally associated with uses permitted in the zone in which the property is located. So in my reading of this, that would include the caretaker.
Yeah, that was my interpretation back on Tabula Rosa. But based on the Court of Appeals decision and my reading of it, it's not my opinion now that we can do that. And I wish it was. And again, I don't mind if the board decides to go ahead and approve it, but I just don't think it will pass muster at Court of Appeals.
Thank you.
Let's see.
What conditional use would have to be put in place for this to be approved? Is it the occupancy of the house,
Well,
or is there more to it than that?
yeah, it just the way that we have processed short-term accommodations is to put it in as a conditional use for a bed and breakfast. And the courts seem to me have said at the Court of Appeals that you can't do that in a farm zone, that you can't have short-term rentals in the farm zone because you have to have someone that is occupying that and using it as a home for it to satisfy the home occupation standards, that it's got to be a family that is managing that, the home occupation.
Which they said they were going to do on an adjacent property as a
Right.
caretaker's home.
Yep.
So, and is that would that be part of a conditional use to this being a short-term rental, or no? Because then they'd have to apply to have it to be a B&B. They'd have to apply to have it to a B&B, and then they could have the caretaker's home. Or is that out too because of the?
I
Court-
think if you're going to do a short-term accommodations, you can do it as a bed and breakfast, and a bed and breakfast. You can do a bed and breakfast if you're applying for and getting approval for a home occupation, and the home occupation would have you be in the home to deal with the guests, not on an adjacent in an adjacent dwelling.
So can, this footnote was cited by Mr. Gilardi that, they're not specifically addressing whether a short-term rental could be conditionally permitted. Do you have any response to that? How are you interpreting the footnote?
I think, it's a really good argument. I look though at the recent decision that the Court of Appeals has made that says going to the Oregon Supreme Court that talks about the occupancy of a home occupation. And, they recently, Land Use Board of Appeals supported us, Court of Appeals didn't support us. They cited this case. And all of that leads me to believe that you can't have a short-term rental in the farm zone. And we'll see with the Oregon Supreme Court. But when they cited in that decision, their previous decision in Clackamas, it made me think, well, I don't think we can do these short-term rentals in the farm zone. And we had been doing a few of them if they met certain parameters. And I don't know if that means that I'm wrong, and yet we need to approve this and have it go up, or if it means that the legislature's got to deal with this. But there's a huge demand for this in the farm zone, which can be both a blessing and a curse. And so, but from what I am reading of this, it's not allowed in the farm zone.
So then what happens to those that have already been approved?
They can do it as long as they are the ones that are managing it. But if they want to sell it to somebody else, I think they've got to abide by whatever the standard is at that time.
So is the Clackamas County ruling, is that moving its way up through the court system?
I don't believe so.
Okay.
So if someone complains about an existing operation, then what's our response?
Well, for the Brooks Winery, my response to them, and I was sending this to Elaine Aldrich, who was the attorney working on the latest B&B. So I knew I didn't have to explain it to her that, I told her that, it looks like you have a short-term rental here. You'll either have to, abandon that short-term rental, take it off of your website and not use it as such, or you'll have to do a rezoning. And so they decided to no longer use it as a short-term rental.
So being what you know about this property and the process you've been through, do you think it would qualify to be an Airbnb if they came back with a new application?
Yeah, if they came back with an application and said, someone's going to be living in the structure full time, and they're going to be, providing bed and breakfast accommodations, I don't see why it wouldn't be able to be approved. And they can also do it as a long-term rental. There aren't any restrictions against doing a long-term rental, but of course that means that they can't just drop in and use it when their family wants to get together.
Long-term rental is over 30
Over
days.
30 days.
Okay.
Of course, now we allow ADUs for that purpose.
And that
So-
doesn't require conditional use.
I'm sorry.
Long-term rental.
ADUs does not require any restriction on long-term rental of ADUs,
Yeah.
If that's the question.
No, just in general. I mean,
Yeah,
this
just in general, we
specific
don't-
property, long-term rental, they don't need to come to
Yeah,
us.
they don't have to come
yeah.
to us for that.
This is very frustrating because we know it's happening already. As is evidenced by Brooks' issue.
Which is very easy to see on Airbnb website.
Right. And we're already inching closer and closer to this use anyway. I mean, we just approved ADUs for long-term rentals in resource zones.
But not
Sorry, exception zones. There was discussion about going to resource zones. And obviously the B&B approvals are something that we do fairly often. So I guess I'm just, I'm getting sort of caught up on this, the language of the Court of Appeals that says that they acknowledge that LUBA did not address whether short-term rentals could be conditionally permitted, as Ken just stated as well. But it says we do not address it either. So it seems that there's conflicting statements about what they're actually addressing. And unfortunately, it feels like if we do approve this, that we're setting the Steppens up for further legal process in terms of.
It
appeal,
sounds like
so.
either way. I mean, if they want to appeal, it's going to cost them.
Right.
If they have to fight
new
Friends
app-
of Yamhill County, then they'll have to,
Or a new application is gonna cost.
or a new application.
Except this is what they're asked, this is what we're being asked today. So that's the
Well,
question.
I do agree that this is not where we set policy. So that statement that we're not making policy today is accurate. I also don't think that it would be possible, given that it would be more lenient than state law. Correct? We can be more restrictive, we can't be more lenient. So even if we did want to come back and revisit this issue on a policy platform, it wouldn't fly. Yeah,
I guess
just-
save a lot of time if we knew whether they'd be willing to reapply it as a B&B.
Again, this is the question.
so
Yeah,
Just looking for a week.
per the measure 49 claim, would it be possible to, that's just a dwelling, right? So you could build a B&B and have someone live in it? And to have someone occupy it?
Yeah, the measure 49 could be a bed and breakfast on its own where someone is occupying it and managing it as a bed and breakfast.
But this is really pertinent to a large home that when it's not occupied could be bringing in income. So it's
Well,
not too,
Yeah, I'm just trying to
yeah.
think through other ways to bring in income. Obviously, it's an investment to build a B&B, but if you're gonna build a structure anyway.
But a caretaker structure versus a structure that you would rent out.
Well, it doesn't have to be nine rooms either, so. Yeah. So if someone complain, and I hate to single out people out, but the tabula rasa, if someone complains about that,
They have a land use approval that they went through the process, they got it approved, they've complied. So as long as they're abiding by their approval, they're fine. It's just if they want to go to sell it, there's and a lot of times with a successful bed and breakfast, someone does want to sell it. They want to sell that name and the experience and if they do sell it, they're going to have to comply with the standard for a bed and breakfast. Unless it gets changed somehow in the meantime.
but the home, is tabula rasa is home occupation permit. Don't those have to be renewed or reviewed?
If we get complaints, we do a review or renewal, but it's pretty rare for us to get complaints about a bed and breakfast unless we very seldom get complaints on those.
And as long as it doesn't change ownership, they can keep.
As long as it doesn't change ownership, they can keep going on it.
Commissioners, any further questions?
I just want to confirm that with the Clackamas County suit, the reason that you're requesting that we deny this is because you know that we'll be in the same boat as Thousand Friends versus Clackamas County if we approve this, correct?
Yeah,
Or the theory would be.
yes, and, you know, and frankly, I was hoping the board would, you know, decide this is my reading of it. This is the best information I have at the time. But yeah, you know, there's always someone else's view of those same
Sure.
set of circumstances and
But if it weren't for,
if it weren't for the Clackamas County decision, I would,
you'd be approving it.
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I know, it doesn't feel good to me either way. It's, you
It
know,
doesn't, but I'm
we're
ready.
shutting people down at the same time that we are allowing people to operate.
No, no,
So
it's tough, but I know what, I'm ready to vote whenever you guys are.
do I have a motion?
I make a motion that we approve. Guess I better have a number in front of me. Docket number C -21-22, tax lots 2436-1600 and 3402-100.
A motion to approve
The
what?
application.
To
What?
uphold the planning director's denial of a permit,
No,
deny the
so
appeal. And uphold the planning director's decision, or what is your motion? Just want to make sure we're clear.
Approve the appeal, approve the application.
What if the motion was to approve the use with the conditions suggested by the applicant in their submittal of in April? I can't remember the exact date, but
I guess I'm not clear on the motion.
Your motion is to approve the application and deny the planning director's denial of the application.
correct,
Okay, so you would like to allow them to operate as a short-term
Correct.
rental as a home occupant?
correct, yes,
Okay,
Overturning the planning director's decision.
correct.
further discussion?
No.
I just want to say that this is I hate that we have two different practices that we're holding people.
And I'm gonna be the first to say, this is nothing 100% against Ken.
No, I
At
mean,
all,
these
I
are
don't, it's,
confusing decisions to interpret.
Yep.
And unfortunately, I hope this
there's a
doesn't,
lot of moving pieces to this one.
yeah, I hope this doesn't send the Steppens into some type of legal quagmire, as we often see. But, you know, we understand how hard it is to make money off of rural land, especially farming right now. It is not easy. So I think that we strive to make sure that people can do what they need to do on their land within the purview of our land use laws. So
I think the applicant is also aware of the challenge in regards to the Thousand Friends and the Clackamas County decision. So it's not as if this is a brand new piece of information. This is weighed into and factored into the appeal. And that has a lot to do with the way I'll be voting today.
I agree.
okay. All right, I will call the question. All those in favor of Commissioner Johnston's motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed, same sign. Great, thank you. Okay,
since Jody isn't here,
findings.
could we ask for assistance by Mr. Gilardi for the findings? And would we have findings in 3 weeks or?
She's out through the end of this week.
Correct. She'll be
Okay.
back next week.
And then
So findings for, I don't have my calendar. in front of me.
We will issue, you said 3 weeks?
You're
27.
not here.
Oh, we're not
We're
here.
not here the 27th, so August 3rd,
August, okay.
that's 4 weeks.
Does that work? Okay. So we will schedule findings for August 3rd.
Jody will be out that week as well, but
Oh.
we can get through them. It won't be a problem.
Okay.
All righty.
Okay. Coming back into the agenda here, we're picking up at announcements. Commissioners, any announcements?
Parade weekend.
Parade weekend, yes. It was a good hot parade weekend. And then this coming weekend is Carlton is going to host a cleanup of the right of way within the city limits, knocking down some brush and just making sure that fire danger is suppressed there. So we want to join them on that. You're welcome to. I don't think I have any further announcements. Announcements? No? Commissioner Starrett?
No, thank you.
Okay. If that's all for the good of the order, I will adjourn the Yamhill County Board of Commissioners formal session for July 6th, 2023.